Welcome to Pipesim Python Toolkit for Beginners. In this video, I'll show you how to get and set several properties for single or multiple components. For this purpose, I created this simple script where, first of all, I imported the model class from 6GIL Pipesim, then I imported constants from 6GIL definitions. I used the path to the case study model CSN303 and loaded this model in PTK session. And I also created the simple function to save this model in temporary folder because I'm going to change the value of this model. So now I saved the model. Let me just reopen the model again and make sure that it was saved properly. So the model was saved, and here in the model we have several flow lines, several chokes, and all other things which are necessary for us to update the properties. So in the list of the flow line, in the flow line managers, we have different properties: horizontal distance, inner diameters, and all other things. I'm going to extract these values and update these values. So first of all, I want to start from reading information about available flow lines in the model. For this purpose, I'm going to use model find. Then I will request everything from the model and add a filter, filtering by type: model, components, flow line. In the response, I have the list of names of all flow lines inside the model. I'm going to use this flow line name D1 to get the values of this element. For receiving the information about this component, I'm going to use method model get values and just pass the name of the flow line as argument. In the response, I have the default dictionary with properties and value of these properties. If I don't want to get everything, I can specify certain parameter I want to read. Let's use the same method, model get values. In this case, I can use explicitly the flow line and pass the same name in case I have other elements with the same name. And then I need to set up the parameters. In the parameters, I need to specify the list of properties I want to read from this component. Let me try to read parameters, flow line, and, for example, horizontal distance. I send a request, and I've got the response with one element, D1, and one property, horizontal distance and value. If I want to get more information, I can set up other parameters. For example, parameters, flow line, and then, as an example again, the inner diameter. And I have the response with two properties. If you don't know the units which I use to define these values, you can set up third parameter in the same method getValue. For this purpose, we can use the show units. By default, it's false, but we can override it and use true. Once we use true, we've got one more line in the response with property and units, which is used for this property. So the horizontal distance in feet and the inner diameter in inches. If we want to get the information not from certain flow line, but for all flow lines, we can use similar request modifying the first argument. So I'm going to use model get values, but in this time I'm going to use the component and specify model components flow line. Then I also need to pass the list of parameters. I will copy the line from the previous request and send it here, and then send the request. I received name of flow lines and dictionary for each of them with property and value of these properties. You can see that we have different horizontal values and we have the different inner diameter. Now it's time to update the model. The simplest way to update the model is to set the certain value for certain component. But if I want to apply the values for multiple components, I can use the method model set all value. And here again I need to specify the component. I'm going to update component flow lines. Now I need to set the parameter. I'm going to update, for example, inner diameter. And then I need to set the value. We have the value 4 point something, 6 point something, so I'm going to use the 5 and apply changes. If I do the one step back and rerun the previous request, I'll see that all inner diameter values were updated and now the values are 5. It means that we successfully applied all changes. What if I want to update different values, different parameters for different components? For this purpose, I need to use special dataset. And first of all, I need to import default dictionary from collections. So from collections, I will import default dictionary. When it's imported, I need to create the data structure to keep my new values. So I will call it values and then default dictionary, and as argument I need to pass the dictionary. And now when we have these values, we can fill this information. So for instance, I am going to use D1 flow line. So I will specify D1 and then I need to pass parameters. Parameters, flow line. Let's use horizontal distance again. And the value should be, let me add 555. And then I will copy the same thing and change the value for flow line D2. And let me use the value for 44. And now I'm going to change another one parameter. So instead of the horizontal distance, I'm going to change, for example, in the diameter. And I will use 5.5. And for the D2, I'm going to change the diameter and set the value as 4.4. So the data structure is updated, and now all I need to do is just to pass it to the model. So for the model, I will choose set values and pass these values to the model. And now it's time to save the model. And you remember that previously I defined the save method, so it will save the model. And I will go back to the user interface and update the model what I saved. So the model was read successfully. And now I open the flow manager and I want to check D1, D2 properties. So we can see that horizontal values were changed for D1, D2, and inner diameter also was changed for D1, D2. So the value was successfully changed. If you have access to your data from your code, it's fine. So you can read it, create the structure, and send the structure to the model using this set value and do it in one request. It's much better than update one by one. It's much faster. But it's also convenient when you have all your data in Excel. Then you can save your data in special structures as CSV file. I've already prepared one example. Let me just show you. So I created the simple table where in column you have the name of the flow lines. In the rows, you have the name of the properties. So for B1 flow line, we have the horizontal distance 15. For B2, horizontal distance 16. And then I also updated the inner diameter and elevation values. So all these values are saved as a flow lines CSV file in the temporary folder. And I'm going just to read this information and update to the model. So I will do it using the pandas object. So first of all, I need to import pandas, SPD, and then I can read this information, pd get CSV file, and then I need to specify the path to this file. Ctemp flow lines CSV. Okay, it should be read CSV. So we have this nice table as output, but we also have the indexes 0, 1, 2. I don't need these indexes, so I just need to change set index, and then I already have the column indexes. I'm going to use these indexes. So now the view is correct, and I just need to assign the return to the structured data. So the data contains information from my Excel file. And now it's time to update the model. So I'm going to use model, set values, and then I will pass the data. The data was updated, and I need to save the model and check the results from user interface. So I'm going back to user interface, open user interface, open flow line manager, and check the value of B1, B2. So we can see that the value of B1, B2, inner diameter and horizontal distance they were updated properly. Okay, and now it's time to close the session. That's all.